Hello everyone, and welcome to another video on the Casio Ct-X3000 keyboard. Recently there was a comment from somebody watching my videos called Joe, who was asking about mixing and layering the sounds together and balancing those, and also some questions about how to use the keyboard in terms of a non-sighted musician who's trying to use the keyboard, and obviously a lot of things happen on the screen, so it's very difficult to see any of the parameters. So I'm going to try and address some of those issues here. You will need obviously someone with sight to help set things up, but hopefully once we have set some things up, it'll become a little bit easier if you can't actually see the screen and you're just doing everything by touch. This also brought back to mind that a few years ago, one member of our family was blind as well, and she used Braille. I don't know if you can see that on the screen, to label things like CDs. So I guess it would be possible to put some Braille stickers on the keyboard as well to help find your way around. So anyway, let's answer a couple of questions, first of all, about layering sounds and mixing them together. So at the moment, you can see I've just got one sound, the stage piano. It says U1 up on the screen, and that's all we can hear when I play the keys. To add another layer, we have to press the third button along, upper layer, and now it's put in a default sound, mellow strings. And if we want to change the volume between the two sounds, we need to go into the mixer section. So that means pressing this button that says Part Mixer with a long press. And now we're in the mixer section. And on the screen again, you will need someone to look out that it will say Mixer Keyboard. Okay, so that anything that we set now within the mixer is going to affect the keyboard. Anything that's played from the keyboard. So the upper tones, the lower tones, also in that category would be the phrase pads and also the arpeggiator as well. They are all represented here on the screen by these numbers 1 to 9, and you can turn them on and off. You can set the volume, you can set pan, reverb send, chorus send, delay, and then it goes back to part. And I'm just using the up and down arrows, number 2 and number 5 on the keypad up here, to select between each of those settings. So at the moment on the screen, number 1 is flashing, and the volume for number 1, the piano, is set to 127. So if I adjust this value, and I can use the wheel, so if I take it right down to 0, you're just left with the strings. If I bring it up, the piano gets a little bit louder. I can also make adjustments to this value with the plus and minus buttons here. And if you press the number button, then type in a 3-digit number. So let's put it to 100. Piano volume is now set to 100. You can also go back to a default of 100 just by pressing the plus and minus buttons together. But let's bring the piano volume up to its maximum of 127. Now if I want to adjust the volume of the strings, I need to move the cursor, move this flashing onto number 2, so I use the arrows on the keypad, and now number 2 is flashing. So anything that I adjust here, pan or volume or reverb send, will adjust those settings for the strings. So we want to adjust the volume on the strings, and again either using the wheel. If I take it right down to 0, you can't hear the strings. back to 127 and the strings come back in. Now, of course, once we've set those levels and those other parameters to how we like them, we can save them in a registration button here. The registration buttons are just above the keyboard, in the middle of the keyboard, and they're raised and they're numbered 1 to 8. And there are 16 banks of registrations, and we just change bank by either pressing the bank button in turn like that. The number goes up on the screen, or we can use the wheel again, or we can use the plus and minus buttons as before. But let's put it onto bank number 1, and I want to change, I want to set the levels that I've just created in the mixer. And I'm going to save it into a registration, bank number 1, registration number 1. So I just hold down the store button and then press number 1, and that's stored. Let's say I like that volume for one particular song, but for another song the strings are too loud. So let's adjust the string volume down to around about midway. And I can store that into registration number 2. Hold down registration, press 2. So with one press now, we've got on registration 1, strings and piano together at maximum. Number 2, quieter strings. So you could do that and get the settings how you like them on each of these registration buttons. You've got to be a bit careful that you're not accidentally changing bank, because if you change bank and then press 1, you'll be on a different registration setting. So let's get it back to number 1. That's with maximum strings and maximum piano. Number 2. Volume of the strings is now halved down to around about 64, 65. The registration buttons, it's worth mentioning, is like a snapshot of settings on the keyboard and saves you a lot of hassle and button pushing. Just with one button press, you can recall settings, and there's a variety of things you can set. You can set the tempo and the tones that you're using and the rhythms and the volume levels, and get back those settings is a really useful feature. Of course, what we could do even further is connect up an expression pedal. This is a Yamaha one, it's not a Casio one or any other make, but it does work, and I've shown this in other videos. But let's set this up and I'll show you how effective this can be. So the expression pedal will be able to control the volume of one of your tones, or actually all of the tones in any layer, the upper layer 1, upper layer 2, lower layer 1 and lower layer 2. And it has a jack plug like this one, and it goes into the back of the keyboard into pedal number 2. So make sure it goes into number 2 and not into number 1. Number 1 will only allow connections for foot switch type pedals for sustain, or you can also control rhythm start and stop. But let me connect this up. So this expression pedal is now connected into the keyboard. Let's go back to registration 1, which is the one with strings and piano all at maximum volume. And I'm just going to, with my hand, just move this back so it's in its almost upright position. Play some notes on the keyboard and you're not hearing anything. So when I bring this in gradually, let's bring it about halfway, the strings and the piano are coming back into volume, and a bit more, and if I put it right the way down, we're back to full volume. So let me just show you how to set that all up. This is within the function menu. If we go to a short press on the function menu, and then using the left and right arrows, you'll want to get to controller, and then press enter. And the first thing you'll come across is a pedal, which is what we want to set. So we'll press enter again. And now we're going to use the left and right buttons to go along the line of various settings for the pedals. And this is pedal number 2. Remember, the expression pedal goes into number 2. So we're looking for anything that says PD2. So PD2 effect. On my keyboard, I've set it to number 5. And there are various settings here from 1 through to 5. And 5 is expression. So this pedal is going to control the expression or the volume of the keyboard. Let's come away from there. And we can just go to the next section in this sort of sub-menu. Pedal to enable. I'm using the left and right arrows. Like that. We set pedal to effect to 5. Pedal to enable. Press enter. And now this is where you can set the pedal to affect the different layers. So again, if I just show you how I've got this set up at the moment, every layer, upper 1, upper 2, lower 1, lower 2, are all set to on. But I can turn these off. So for instance, let's turn upper 1 to off. So here I'll bring the pedal back into view. So remember, we're on full volume. Now when I move the pedal, let's put it about halfway, you'll notice that the string volume has gone down. If I keep going and put it into its almost upright position, the sound of the strings has disappeared. So by turning off upper 1, the pedal isn't affecting the piano, it's only going to affect the strings. So let's bring it about halfway. You can hear the strings coming in. If I push it right to the bottom, the strings are now back up to maximum. So that's a really effective way of controlling 2 layers, or as I say, we can have the expression pedal affect any of the layers, either on or off, like that. And if we come out of there, you might also need to set pedal to type to not to foot switch, which is number 1, but either number 2 or number 3. There are 2 types of expression pedal, and I've found that with the Yamaha it works on type 1, so I've set my keyboard to type 1. And if I move further into this sub-menu, there's also an expression calibration where you can set the position, the highest position and the lowest position of the pedal, and how that affects the keyboard as well. So you might need to set that up as well. But now that's all set up, of course, that can be saved within our registrations. So when I come to use this first registration where I mix the strings and the piano together with maximum volume, of course, I've got control over the volume of upper layer 2, the strings, another thing to think about as well with layers, while we're talking about layers, and this was a question about some of the organ sounds. Let's move over to, I'm going to set up, first of all, get rid of the layer, and let's just pick any old organ sound. And if I add a layer of another organ tone on top, again, the foot switch is going to bring that, is allow me to change the registration and the sound. Just by using the expression pedal, I can change the balance between the two tones, the two different tones of organ. If I wanted, I could even have the same organ sound on the two layers. So I've got jazz organ on the upper layer 1. Let's put jazz organ on upper layer 2, but we'll change the octave this time. So I press the octave button, put it onto upper 2. And you can adjust this to 1 or 2 or even 3 octaves higher or lower. And just with this one tone that's layered and the expression pedal and the octave changes, and by controlling the volume with the expression pedal, I'm able to play sort of hands-free, and be able to get different sounds. And again, I can save this setting into one of the registrations. It could be a different one. So let's save it into number 3. Here's the piano and strings on number 2. And here's the piano and strings on number 1. With the volume being controlled by the expression pedal. So I hope that's useful. Thanks for watching.